7:02. I'd like to call to order the June 21st public work session meeting.
Recording in progress.
Please join me in saying the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Patty, would you like to take the roll, please?
Councilmember Frank Bankert.
Present.
Councilmember Belinda Livingstone.
Present.
Councilmember Leslie Notero.
Present.
Councilmember Lloyd Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Zabel.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jody Shirley.
Here.
Mayor Dave Gaddis. City Manager Kyle Riefler.
Here.
City Attorney Randy Mora.
Present. And let the record note the members Gaddis and Livingstone are attending remotely.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the discussion of the strategic plan, and this is brought forth by City Manager Kyle Riefler. Kyle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So, since the last meeting, we went through the first roughly half of the goal sheets of the strategic plan. So, pages 1 through 5, which I included in the agenda packet, is what we went through, and I made revisions to the wording throughout those goals based on what council directed during the meeting. And where we left off is the bottom of page 5, so we start at goal 3, communications and community at number 6. So if there's anything in the first 5 pages that you don't agree with the wording, I kind of took out the things that we were already done with, and then reworded some things like maintain walking easement or, where we had the internship program, I took that out, I put it, seek community volunteers is kind of where we left it.
Does anyone have anything they want to add to pages 1 through 5? Okay, I think we're ready to move on to page 6 if you want to start there, Kyle.
Okay. So moving on to page 6 is goal 3, communication and community. First bullet point, this is a continuation of the bullet point on page 6 is manage resident expectations, projects, schedules, and effectiveness, i.e. stormwater mitigation. I believe we're still in that part of that phase. The next bullet point is timely, accessible, user-friendly. It says underneath, develop a feedback system to acknowledge and provide closure, online permit system for parking.
Did we lose you, Kyle? I think he's frozen. I think everyone's frozen.
I'm not frozen.
Okay.
Great. I'm still good.
While we're waiting for Kyle to come back, I think the one thing on the managing residents' expectations, when it comes to the stormwater mitigation, the point of that being addressed was to make sure that residents understand we're trying to minimize the flooding, we can never fix the problem, and making sure that that's shared clearly with residents, because I think there are some expectations that we can fix the flooding in the roads, and we'll never be able to do that. So I just need, I don't know how we do that, but we need to somehow get the message out to residents and hopefully
Expectations is the key word.
Right.
I think a good format, a good time to do that, maybe, I know the city manager has told me that when the design is going to be worked on and completed by the current engineering group, they're going to be making presentations to us at meetings. And I think each of us should use every opportunity during that session, when the engineering firm is presenting, that we say something along the lines that you just said. I mean, it's monetarily impossible to come up with a plan that eliminates flooding.
I disagree.
No, it's monetarily impossible. We don't have the
Under a
funding.
Cat 3 storm, yes. Under a Cat 2 storm, no.
I'm talking about completely. So
Oh, not just for Feller Beach.
right.
Yeah.
So we need to reinforce that, and I think that might be a good session to do that, when the engineering firms are explaining what their plan is and what they want us to support, just so we use that opportunity to set the expectations. So they know that we're going to do a great job, the design is going to do a great job, but understand it's not going to completely eliminate the potential of flooding on your streets and or your home. It's just not. And some people do walk away with that thought.
They do. Because it's a big number being spent too. So it almost appears as though we're going to fix the problem. But we're cleaning up a mess that hasn't been maintained for many, many, many years and trying to solve it as much as we can.
I think the problem is it's not the expense that people look at so much, because I don't think they're really aware of the expense. You look at their street being torn up for weeks, months, repaved, re-put in, summer storms come along, and it's back in the street. They're saying, when they did my street, two of my neighbors said, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
As the sod was floating down the street. And I said, well, you keep doing the same, as Marty would say in Golf Pass, keep doing the same thing, expect the same results. And that's what we've been doing for 75 years.
Kyle, are you back with us?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know where I started losing connection. We just talked about expectations, I believe.
Yes, right. So we're on the second bullet point on page 6.
Okay, so timely, accessible, user-friendly. To develop a feedback system to acknowledge and provide closure. We do have sort of a feedback system with as a city manager, we have council member hotline. We provide the emails to every council member on the website. I'm not sure what else we're trying to do for a feedback system. We've been utilizing surveys for different projects. If there's any input on that.
I kind of agree, that goes with the next point where you're talking about a complete contact list. That's been tried. Many people just opt out of it. It'd be totally effective if we were able to reach 100% of the people. Then you can do the online surveys, the email connectivity. But as it stands, we're lacking the potential to reach, probably at least 25 to 30% of the population on any one issue.
Kyle, do you know what the percentage of people that are signed up for the city newsletter?
Right now, let me just pull it up, I can tell you, just to get the accurate number. I think we're in like the 400, but some of that may be, spouses in the same household. Let's see. It's taking a second to load. Another thing I saw on there was it says the online permit system for parking the boats, RVs, and trailers. We haven't experimented or anything, but we could try to do some sort of online form on the website to facilitate that.
I think that would be good, because a lot of times people are bringing their boat home on a Friday afternoon from work, can't make it to City Hall, they want the trailer there for the weekend. It would be very helpful if we could do something where they could print out the permit and attach it to the trailer once it's parked.
It was actually
Okay.
discussed last year, so we did.
Yeah.
So, if we didn't have to rely on staff to process, like if it's over the weekend, the only problem would be being able to, because if we were unable to fill out a form and print the permit, that would work great, as long as it fell under restrictions of the code, but we don't have any kind of database to cross-check that without staff, available. So like if somebody did fill out a permit, then they could go and fill out another permit. We don't have the means of actually controlling that, I guess.
Dave, you're garbled, we can't hear you. Okay, Kyle, yeah, I hear what you're saying on that. I was kind of thinking along the lines of, is there a way to do it? Do they have to actually come into the office to get a permit, or is that something they can call in and say, hey, I want a permit for the weekend, can you email me something? I mean, is there a way for a working, because there are several people in our city that work, believe it or not.
Yeah, I think definitely if it's during business hours, but we can definitely get the email over, and then they'd have to print it out themselves.
Okay.
But I think, yeah, we can make a system like that work. We provide it, either you come in or we do send the colored card permit to you, and then you just gotta print it out yourself.
Right. Or have a box where they can swing by if it's after hours and pick it up. I don't know. I'm just kind of brainstorming a little bit, but I know why some people don't always have those permits is because of just that reason. They can't make it by City Hall during the 9 to 4:30 business hours or what have you.
Right. Okay, I'll make sure that we have some sort of system to do so.
Do you understand me now?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay, all right, so I killed my video and hopefully that'll work for you. I like the idea of having an online form. I absolutely believe that it requires human interaction to approve the form at City Hall. Basically, we establish guidelines that they must complete the form before this date and time, otherwise you miss out on the weekend. And then you can certainly email it back in PDF form to be printed out. I have no problem with that whatsoever, and I think it's a great idea just to save everyone a trip from having to come to City Hall. I wanted to also touch on the fire point with the closure. Yeah, to acknowledge and provide closure. Okay, so develop a feedback system. This is something that I discussed in my previous term about developing a feedback system. And whenever we're saying to acknowledge, this is that the city would be acknowledging, hey, we've received your feedback, and then who is supposed to provide closure? Is that I wouldn't think that it would be any council member, because at any given time, we're going to have different opinions and possibly even get it wrong. But if it's coming from the city manager and or staff, well then that's something a little bit different, and we're not having to maintain public records. We're screenshots, all of that. I think it's great that we should all receive whatever feedback would be completed on the form, so everybody gets the email. But I would request and expect everyone on the council to not respond directly on that form system. If it's somebody that emails you directly with a question, that's a little different than everybody getting it. That's my 2 cents on that part. The reason why we didn't do this in my last term was for this very reason right here, the sunshine, potential for sunshine violations, and also for maintaining a public record.
So we sort of have an online form, like the Ask the City Manager. What I can do is I can have all the council emails emailed whenever somebody, submits one of those forms, and then I can continue to do what I do, which is I reply to all of them. So I guess I could reply to the person specifically, or I could reply and copy all the council members, which is fine as long as as long as we're not all getting in there and emailing. And also with a lot of feedback, like for instance with council member Zabel, he gets questions and he'll copy me with the resident, and then I'll provide the answer to the questions, and that's worked out pretty well for the closure.
Works for me.
Okay.
But also, I will say this, okay, so Councilmember Zabel responds, forwards this on to the city manager, and then city manager responds to the, I'm assuming that Councilmember Zabel would probably say, I forwarded this on to, city manager, and hopefully he'll get back to you. But that's where Councilmember Zabel gets a direct email. This wouldn't be a web form online. This is where he's just getting an email directly.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
When I get an email, what I do is I forward that with the person's email address on there, said, forward city manager, can you please take a look at this? And it's like, that's it, I'm hands off, no decisions. It's just forwarding on a message.
Yeah, this is pretty much what we all do. So, we'll just, there's nothing to change there. I'm talking about this feedback system, and that's really my concern is how that's handled whenever someone fills a generic form out, and who's going to actually respond to it. And that's where I think it really, you're on the city's website, you're asking a question to the city, and I would think that city staff or city manager should respond.
Agree.
Yeah, so I guess we could continue to do it that way. But if you want to be in the loop of what comes in, I can set the website to email everyone. So you just.
Yeah, I think whenever you responded, you would just CC the city council. So we saw what you said, and we hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Okay.
All right, good plan. All right, moving
So-
on, Kyle. We don't have a complete contact list.
Yeah, I have 384. That's what our current list is at.
Okay. I don't think there's any way to change that. Does anyone else
We've
have?
tried a
Yeah.
lot of different ways.
There are people that are completely disconnected from the city, and they don't want to know. They just want to live here and mind their own business, and they don't want to be involved. And I respect their privacy.
Okay. So moving on to the city website.
Okay. we left off at the contact list, mentioned increased functionality of the city website. The last major makeover to it was when I first came in, which was in 2018. We currently use Digital Eel on a WordPress platform. Digital Eel is a company, they're on Gulf Boulevard, a little south of here, I can't remember the exact city, but they're the ones that help us do the intricate tweaking of the website when we can't figure it out on our own. I don't know if there's any suggested format, things you could change just in the architecture of the website. But always open to making adjustments to make it more resident friendly.
Does anyone have any experience with a marketing firm or a website design firm that we could reach out to? Who does Bel Air Bluffs use? Or the city of Bel Air? They have a nice website.
Feel like I'll have to find that out. Town of Bel Air or Bel Air Bluffs?
Yeah, Town of Bel Air has a nice website. It's pretty interactive and easy to move around. I think we should look at every design.
Okay.
You're definitely onto something, Vice Mayor Shirley. And here's why. If you find one you like, they don't have to reinvent the wheel or do any custom programming. They've already done it. They own the modules. They can replicate and just change the pictures and the colors. We have pretty much the same, all the same features. Obviously, if Digital Eel's not doing it, we'd be required to change hosting companies to make that happen, where they would have to reach out to whoever it is that's hosting and see if they do the same thing. Almost all of the WordPress websites are module-based, so it's just how much homework you've done to find a correct module, and then if you tried it out, and does it actually work the way that it's supposed to? There's not too much you can't do with WordPress. It's just we don't want to have to start completely over. We want to find somebody that's already doing it.
Good point, Dave.
Okay, so I can find out from Town of Bel Air kind of who set that all up and see if I can reach out, get an idea of pricing and things. Interactive survey feedback applications, but we kind of just talked about that. Timely, accurate agendas, minutes, events, weather and traffic events. I think we're doing pretty good with the agendas and the minutes, and getting the recordings on there. If we have a significant weather bulletins for the community, we try to send them out on the constant contact and then put them on the front page of the website. As far as the ADA compliance, the last thing we did was we made sure everything was, all the documents and the agendas were readable, so they can click and have the computer read it. I'm sure there's other facets of ADA compliance that we're not in, haven't been able to, format, but I direct that to City Attorney Mora about where things that we could do to be in compliance with what other cities have done in that.
I have a question for Mr. Mora.
Yes, sir.
I think the last time we discussed ADA and the website was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was best effort within the means of the city. Is that correct?
On some level, yes, it is an amorphous target in that you have to have made best efforts. There is no yet clear federal guideline. I cannot point you to, these are the 6 things in the 7 boxes you need to check to be an ADA website compliance. Website compliance is, up until this point, truly been looked to by non-governmental agencies' guidance like the WCAG or WCAG guidelines, and within WCAG there's different grades of 2.0 and 2.2, like the Windows versions of yesteryear. And so what I would have to look at is whether or not, and I can't recall whether or not this city had received a lawsuit in connection with ADA website compliance, as many cities did around 2016 to 2019, and if so, what commitments may have been made in the form of a settlement. That'd be one place to look if any kind of settlement was reached. Some cities had suits, and then because the cultural moment passed, owing in part to some judicial orders in the federal courts, some cities just had their cases go away without consent judgments or settlements with commitments. But regardless, yes, you're right, you need to make a good faith effort. You need to be prepared to accommodate. So there's also the situation of saying, what some cities did was put some button or landing page on their website saying we are prepared to accommodate any requests, and then they get a request and not have measures in place. And so we don't want to be in that position either. But generally speaking, we are past the time and viability of the position of saying we didn't know we had to do this, or nobody's asked for it, so we just left our website the same it was in 2005. Most cities are trying at the very least to get elements like alt tags on photographs, readable, OCR-enabled readable text for screen readers and the like, and those are some of the more basic elements that have become more common industry standards that we're likely to see with most contractors you're looking to. Some communities I know have done RFPs for this sort of thing. You can also look at piggyback contracts and the like from a purchasing standpoint. But that's what I would say as to where the state of the law is on ADA website compliance and accessibility.
And I think that one of the problems that we were running into is the more online interaction we offer, the harder it is to be in compliance.
That is correct, and that's why with some cities you see records pulled after a certain period. You may, with a lot of cities now, you find you won't see minutes going back before 2019 and 2020, because some cities said, well, going forward from this date in 2019 we'll make it, but we're not going to go back and make records available. Also, the more content you push, the more content that has to be accessibly enabled. So whether it's your budget, your infographics, and these sorts of things, that's where you started to see that challenge. So yes, there is an element of the more content you push, the more challenging that can become, and that's why if you've tracked this issue like I have, you'll notice the change in city websites and how bare bones a lot of them are at this point, and why they don't have several different pages for every different department and things like that.
One more question. Wouldn't it make more sense to have ADA in front of interactive so that we know that probably comes before adding special bells and fancy bells and whistles, because we can't do ADA on on any of these features we want to add. Then we have to delay it until we can.
That's a policy decision for you folks, so I'll yield back to the council to discuss.
Yeah, I think that's a good adjustment on the goal, is to definitely just change the order of those, Kyle.
So change the order of,
the functionality of the website, that ADA has to be at the top of the list.
come first, and then, yeah.
Does anything else that we do, it's got to comply.
Okay. moving on. So then the next page, on page 7, it says ADA compliance monitor. We just kind of talked about that. Refine implementation of electric sign. We kind of have done that over our experience of using it with the switching between colors. I originally started with the white, and I was told that using the white uses all the diodes or wears the lights out the quickest. Then we switched to a red, which was not very visible. After getting feedback from residents, we decided on that bright blue color, seems to be the best color for the sign. We stick to text messages. We don't do anything fancy with imaging. And then we operated from the 6 a.m. to the 10 p.m. time slot. So it's kind of what we've been doing with the sign. I don't know if there's any other input of things that we could do better with the messaging.
Anyone have any feedback? Maybe we can scratch it off the list, off the goal.
Okay.
It's taken care of.
Okay. All right, engaged community, town hall meetings. They're kind of have been run in a town hall format for a while now. Dollar Beach 101 budget capital plan, utilize town hall meetings to educate residents on budget, CIP and codes. I'm not sure where.
We've had other things, I'll just list coffee with the mayor, weekly city council hours. The council members have been at beach and bridge cleanups. Any activity sponsored by the city, we've had representation there. Those are just a few of the things that have been ongoing. Plus, we've outreached, you have the mayor and vice mayor attending the local councils of council members, like the Big C. And you got people like Frank that's going out reaching out to county type activities. So it's bubbling up to us and us reaching out to the greater community as well.
So maybe that's just a continuation, maybe we just continue to engage with the community. Because these things are already being done.
Right, okay. I guess optimize city websites, sort of redundant. Okay, that takes us to page 8, which is goal 4, aesthetics. Create a vibrant, well-planned, well-maintained appearance for the city that denotes a sense of community and our quality of life. And then the first bullet is master plan for Gulf Boulevard beautification, undergrounding, wooden pole replacement, evaluate deep cost updates. So we started moving forward with that project. And at this point, they're undergrounding south of Causeway Boulevard to move next into north of Causeway Boulevard up to the marina. And as we leave it, the wires are going underground. They'll be topping off the excess pole above the streetlights, and then we'll be left with the wooden pole and the streetlights provided by Duke in their current arrangement. That's something that it'd be an additional cost to change out the lights to something different. That's something I'm getting options from Duke, but that to be presented to the council so that a decision can be made whether we do anything with those lights or leave them for now.
Kyle, was that the sea turtle friendly lights?
That is, yeah, most of the communities are moving to a concrete white pole with, the amber light. And it is provided by Duke Energy that is endorsed by the FWC. We're not required, we're not held to the same standards that other parts of Gulf Boulevard are held to because we're not actually FDOT corridor. It actually, the state route turns at Walsingham. Ours is a county maintained road, but not an actual FDOT corridor. So, you need to check with the county on, what standards they, would want us to have Gulf Boulevard at. We're currently, kind of grandfathered in with our lighting arrangement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, reprogram funding, we've done that with the integrating the rescue funds into the capital, underground project. Complete crossbar, okay, that's been done, the crossbar movement. Walking trail pavement breakout from streets, we've already kind of crossed that off of the previous goals. Street repaving of valley curb repairs, I think that falls into not only what we've done with the future stormwater projects, but maintaining the street index, street pavement condition index to evaluate every year what needs to be resurfaced moving forward. The way the stormwater project was planned was to take care of all the streets that on that index that were a scale of 100, I believe it was a 50 and below, which was a yellow down to the red being worst. So after moving through this project, we'll kind of be at a good point of having good street surface, and I believe the next streets to start looking at closely would be the Belle Isle Avenue, but this should be addressed well through the stormwater project. Street lighting and underground utilities. That goes with what we talked about with the city street lights and assessing where some of the streets are darker than others, or better, and some are better lit, and finding out what standard we want to have the lighting at throughout the city, and progress, forward with a plan to bring all the streets up to a relatively the same standard.
Kyle, can I ask one question back to the street repaving? I know we're paving the streets that we're doing storm work to, but there are some that are pretty bad. Are those getting done at the same time we do the storm water repairs?
Yeah.
The ones based on
do you have specific streets you're talking about?
I don't. I just know we had a couple that we had residents come to meetings and say that their street was really bad. What's the plan for repaving? And maybe if you could just circulate those streets that are targeted so we know what they are.
Yeah, just offhand, when we do the 9th Street area, it's 9th Street, and then it's the cedar, spruce, and pine. And then as you go up through 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, all those streets. And then as you get up into 19th, 20th, 21st, it's those. And then 22nd was done, and there's 23rd, 24th, 25th in Morgan, and then it stops there. Day Shore's still in pretty good shape. So that is not getting repaved except for where, pipes and modifications get done. But yeah, there's pretty good coverage, but I put together, there's a summary of streets that the project will address the paving on.
Okay. Good.
So I can circulate that.
Maybe you can just share that with council so we
Sure.
have it for reference. Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, wait, another question.
About 5-6 years ago, didn't we do a lot of major repaving of the streets?
Some of them, here and there.
Because we did our street, and I didn't think it needed it. I'm talking about just a mill, and they put like 1.5 inches of blacktop.
But there's some of those ones like, I think 19th or 23rd or something that are, I remember residents making a comment that there's faulty, there's problems with them. Leslie?
20th is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Under the subject of aesthetics, I know it's on the beach and waterfront thing, but I would also put beach renourishment as part of the aesthetics goals.
He's got that on the next page.
Yeah, but that's under,
Quick question about the Gulf Boulevard beautification. The association out there is looking to at least do the Christmas banners, I guess. Will we put down on this, coordinate with community efforts for holiday banners?
So you're talking about the Christmas lighting that the community foundation was looking
Yeah,
at,
exactly,
trying to raise
because,
money for.
yeah.
So the question is to put it under,
Gulf Boulevard beautification,
put it under aesthetics
yeah.
as one of the goals. Okay.
Again, it's more, we can't direct it, but we can coordinate with them. Provide what
Right.
assistance they need. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would think that it wouldn't just be Christmas lights, it would be any lamppost decorations, because we have them year round.
Okay. Okay. So we're adding, are we adding renourishment to under the aesthetics, if Councilmember Tara recommended?
Whenever Councilmember Notaro mentioned that, I was thinking it really falls under beach and waterfront, but there's nothing wrong with maintaining what we have. So we clean it, control it, make sure it looks, whatever we have looks nice. I think as far as nourishment goes, it's not one of those things that we'll ever be able to do alone.
True.
Okay. All right, so beach and waterfront, page 9, goal 5, preserve and protect our city's natural beach and waterfront environments. Beach swimmer safety buoy decision, that's been made, so we maintain, I assume, the beach bathing zone. The beach renourishment, support state and county projects. We do that, and currently we're at the hold up right now, trying to get funding or find the alternate means of funding through the county. I know that the county's working on that. I don't know if there's anything we want to do in our strategic plan or just assist.
Vice Mayor Shirley, do you mind if I chime in on this one?
No, please do, I have something to add after you do that. Go ahead.
Okay. As you know, I've been doing a lot of work with a couple of other mayors on this. Let's get the county to fund this project. They will tell you whatever you want to hear, but at the end of the day, it's a circular conversation. Yeah, we need to do it, and then as soon as we walk away, they're right back with, let's get the Army Corps of Engineers to play nice. I think it's probably in our best interest that we all individually, in our own way, become very noisy. And if you have friends in other communities that are also on county or on the commissions or councils, depending upon which community it is, of course, encourage them to also get more noisy, because they're going to tell 3 people what they want to hear, but they don't necessarily have to respond to 3 people.
Can I add to that?
Sure, go ahead.
Anyone's been on the beach the last 3 days, there is no beach, okay? And that was just from the low pressure coming off of Georgia and Alabama and everything like that. This is a picture 3 hours after high tide going down.
Where is that?
That's right at 6th Street Beach entrance. Okay, all the way down in the Indian Rocks. There's no, if I was a vacationer and spent a couple of thousand, $4,000 a week to come here and go to our beaches, I would never come back. And we thrive on tourist money. Not the city, but I mean, Pinellas County. And you think someone would get off, excuse my French, dead ass and do something about this? Well, I agree with the mayor. It's just like typical government, just goes around, no one wants to do anything.
Okay, so I'm gonna be the optimist here and say we get beach renourishment. The city needs to start thinking about some way to hold on to our sand. We need to put some rock formation in place or something to keep our sand in place. Because no matter how much sand you bring in, it's gonna wash out. And I don't care how often you do it, that's a guarantee. Sand moves, that's what it does. There's a reason we have a big sandbar off the beach, is because everything that was pumped onto the beach is trying to get back to where it came from. So unless we do something to hang on to it, it's a moot point. And we continue to renourish, and who knows what we're doing to the ocean floor for our benefit, and we're not doing anything to keep the sand in place. So that's my soapbox, but I definitely don't, there's no point in getting renourishment if we're not gonna do anything to try to hold it in place.
Well, I have a response to that, if that's okay.
Sure.
What I have learned in the last 2 years of trying to find some creative way to get our sand back and also to hold on to it is we'll be very lucky if we get beach nourishment, okay, because it still requires permitting from the Army Corps of Engineers. However, what I've been told is they are no longer issuing permits at all for hardening because whenever they look at what's the fix, they claim that the least invasive way of making sure we have sand is renourishment. So if you go out there and you do breakwaters or jetties or whatever it is whatever it is we think is the best solution, according to Kelly Lee for the county, it requires a 10-year study of the area before you even break ground with a project. They want to track where the tides are flowing and how the sand is shifting, and a very extensive and expensive study. And then they will let you do one somewhere, and then they'll want to watch it for 10 years. And if that one works okay, well, then they kind of start the whole process over again for wherever else you'd like to do it. This is why the county has no interest. They got away with a couple of them down south, or maybe 3 or 4 of them. But from what I've been told over and over and over is they don't do that anymore.
Okay, I think Leslie, did you have something, Leslie? Oh, Lloyd, no.
I did.
Okay.
Hi, Dave. I know yourself and some of the other mayors have been working with the county. So from a funding standpoint, I think you addressed this once before one of our meetings. Does the county have the monies available to do this? So I'm asking that question, can the county possibly come back and say, well, gee whiz, we'd like to do that, but we don't have the monies to take care of that? So I think you had told us once before that in fact they do have funds available to take care of this. Of course, they would prefer the Army Corps of Engineers do it. But that being said, if the Corps is stepping away completely, does the county have the funds to take care of it?
Yeah, I think right now, based upon the conversations that I've had with people who really, I'm sorry, let me make sure I word this correctly. We have taken our message to the county over and over that, hey, you have at least $36 million earmarked for beach nourishment. So a little bit of that has to go to the Treasure Island, St. Pete Beach area. They were able to get, the Army Corps to fund and move forward, not fund, but approve. And then they were able to get federal money and state money and do the project. It's my understanding they're not doing it again, that now they've introduced more easements that they want down south to do the nourishment going forward. I don't know if they'll get it or not, but the point is that now it's not just Sandkey Island, but now you've got beyond Madeira Beach. And if there's anything, I don't think that there's anything north, but you've also got some issues with inlets where you have to have dredging done and things like that. So what they're saying is that, well, we could partially fund the project. Even if we 100% funded it, we wouldn't be able to get it done. And so I believe the TDC right now has I believe it's like a 0.5% is what they're currently collecting from the bed tax for beach nourishment. And I believe right now we're proposing that they move that up to, did I say 1%? Yeah, I'm sorry, 0.5%. We're talking about, or proposing that they move it up to 0.75%. Or possibly even a whole 1%. And so they also have to decide, all right, well, if we change that, which other earmark are we going to steal that from? Or are we going to raise taxes countywide on the bed tax and just make it higher? There's just so many moving parts, but we still feel confident that the county as a whole can 100% fund this. Another idea that was pitched was that we get the state involved and lobby all our senators and representatives and see if they will give us money or at least partially match us so that it's not such a burden on the county. But because of the recent hurricanes, there's no money left. They're only giving it all to repair the damage from the last several hurricanes.
Mr. Mayor, is it a two-pronged or three-pronged system for beach renourishment? I know it's fed, state, but does the county also get involved when it comes to the Army Corps of Engineers, or is the county completely out of it?
Well, what happens is the county actually manages the where they go to the Army Corps and say, we need this, and then they make their argument, and then the county says, okay, we'll do that, or no, we won't, or yes, we will, but you need to do this. And right now, that whole block is strictly because they want 100% easements everywhere where they think they need them.
Yeah, my question was the funding only. I believe it was only two parts, like 70% fed, 30% state, or does the county kick in money too?
No, it's the county does 20%, the state matches the county 20%, and then the Fed will pitch in the 60%.
Okay, thank you.
And so, if you lose that 60%, now the county's, that's a big goal for them. But whenever we know that we're bringing the money in, and face it, baseball is something you go see a baseball game whenever you either live here or you just so happen to be on vacation at the beach. So all of these other pet projects where they're wanting to redo these baseball stadiums or possibly build a sports complex or give millions to the Dali Museum, their number one priority should always be the beaches. And then whatever's left, you fund the other ones. But right now, that is not the case.
Okay, can we all agree to move on so we can try to finish this before our break? And then we can, if not, we'll have to hold off on this finishing the strategic plan. So Kyle, next, red tide mitigation.
Yeah, red tide mitigation, review cleanup response capabilities. Typically what happens is when we get fish kills and we start washing up, it takes a lot of fish up and down Sand Key before the county activates their contractors to assist in the cleanup. So usually when it's in Bel Air Beach, our staff just goes out there and picks up the fish individually and disposes of them within the lining of the dumpsters. Sometimes the county will assist by providing a roll-off dumpster to put the fish in, but that is something that we typically have to do with our city staff. They do a pretty good job at it. Sometimes it takes several days. Sometimes they just keep coming. This last one was horrible. They fished up in a couple days and got them all off the beach. I'm not sure if there's any way we could speed up our cleanup response that we do in-house and just getting out there and doing it.
So do you need to modify our current response? And I mean, you have a plan in place, it's working. Is there anything more that we need to add to that? There's no need to review it if it's working, so we just.
We're getting out there and just cleaning it up, a fast response is the best we can do. And even when we've seen the county engage outside contractors in the cleanup, by that time we had picked up all our fish. So it's been kind of falls on us to get a good response.
So being part of the strategic plan, we're just gonna say being responsive to red tide mitigation. And there's no need to do anything for your plan. Your plan's in place, it's working, it's fine. Correct?
Yes, as long as it doesn't keep, escalating, or it could become a problem if we just keep getting waves of fish, but I guess that's been, we'll see what can be done at that time.
Okay. Waterfront code enforcement. As we're talking about budget, should we start saving for a boat so we can actually do waterfront code enforcement? Should that be added to the budget?
There's a lot of additional expense of the insurance. I can look into it. I'm not sure we would keep the boat. I guess we make a place at the marina is an idea.
We trailer it, we pull it out of the water, we keep it at City Hall or at the house over on Spruce or whatever that street is next door. But I think this subject keeps coming up, and every time we approach it, we're always told we can't do any enforcement because we don't have a boat. So if we're not going to do anything about solving the problem, then scratch it from the list or start saving for a boat. We got to do something. We can't keep pushing. There's no need to keep talking about it if we're not going to do anything about it.
Do you want me to start investigating the costs around the boat and the operations?
I would just say put a fictitious number in there and start saving for it. There's no need to, we're a long ways from purchasing anything, so if we have something in a reserve account, next year you can start looking at what they cost, but if we're saving $5,000-$10,000 a year or something like that, then in a few years, 5 years, you might have the budget to buy something. Yes, Lloyd?
So Kyle, you've referenced to me before in conversation, so we have a boat that your staff use to go out and examine and maintain some of the outfalls. What size boat is that?
That's a tiny 10-foot John boat made of plastic, uses an electric trolling motor. It's definitely not a good boat to get around in water code enforcement.
Yeah, I realize that we all kind of laugh because it does sound pretty small, but it's not more like chasing guys on Miami Vice or anything out there. So basically the boat's being used, whatever boat we would buy, would simply be used to get from point A to point B if they saw something going on the back part of the properties.
You'd have to take it around the outside, you'd be in the intercoastal.
Right.
It's gonna be a little more choppier for a smaller boat.
Well, that's where these guys are in the intercoastal, when they're going out and checking the outfalls and maintaining them, knocking off the oysters and all that kind of stuff. So, again, I mean, we could buy another boat, but I don't think it has to be expensive. Doesn't have to have sirens and lights and all that kind of stuff.
Just a motor.
Yeah. All right.
More robust motor.
We just back to, let's start a savings account so we can at least have a plan moving forward. At this point, we just keep talking about it for the last, I don't know, 6 or 8 years.
Boat you.
And we've not done anything about it.
That's something we want to add as a savings plan in this year's, or this coming budget,
Yes.
2024.
Yes, I would like to. We can vote on that, of course, another time, but yeah, I would like to see that. Okay,
I would agree with that.
all right, so last page, just a summary of the goals, right?
Yeah.
Where they're at.
Kyle?
Yeah, this is where typically we came up with objectives that, fell in line with what we're trying to accomplish with those goals for the upcoming year. I left in the ones that we're still doing. But I need some recommendations for what our objectives are going to be for each of these goals.
Does anyone have any feedback?
I do.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, for objective 2, I would definitely like to focus on lighting the streets up where they're dark.
Okay, well, that's goal 1, objective 2, public safety and health.
Yeah.
Could you please repeat that? We couldn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry. I said for objective 2, I would like to see all of these dark streets lit up.
On goal 1, safety and health,
Goal 1, objective 2,
Okay.
under public and safety and health.
street lighting, okay.
Yeah, and I'd just like to just quickly reinforce what Kyle had mentioned earlier on that. We had a little bit of a discussion about this. I would hate to see the city staff have to run around and try to make customized lighting for different streets. I think it was great, he mentioned earlier, to come up with a standard for the city that meets the city's expectations, and that's what we go with, and we're done with it.
A standard would be nice, but there are some locations where there's no wiring, and I believe solar would probably be the only solution unless you wanted to start trenching and having to do full special wiring for them.
Yeah, the type of lighting, I guess I should have explained that better, more from a standpoint of one street wanting only 2 lights on their entire street and another street saying we want 13 lights. So the type of light, you're correct, Mayor, may be directed based on what's available from a power standpoint. But that's more what I was thinking about, because I've actually heard some residents say, gee whiz, I don't even want any lights on our street. So I don't think that would be in our best interest to accommodate a request like that. We would basically say we want a street light every so many feet, or whatever the case may be that we agree on.
Or maybe a lumens per foot.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything on this? Maybe this should be, I think we said this last time, but like a homework project that we can come back to Kyle with some objectives to each of these goals. Are you okay with that, Kyle? When did you hope to have this complete? Can we look at it the next work session, just this final page?
Yeah, that's completely fine. Really, just so the main goal is to incorporate the strategic planning inside of the budget planning, and I think we're doing so. So anything that directly affects this upcoming budget, that's first and foremost. But then other things that the staff, objectives the staff should accomplish throughout the next year, give us ideas, and then we can assign them and get them done.
Okay. Maybe the next budget meeting, we can just, right after that meeting, address strategic planning. If everyone would be okay with that.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Shirley,
Yes, sir.
shouldn't it be the other way around?
Oh,
Do this
finish out
before
the
the budget?
strategic plan, then get into the budget.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, but I know we have a strict time frame. We have an outline of when we have to meet, and I don't know, Kyle, is that something we can do? Can we do this before the meeting? Does that mean we have to meet at 5? If you've already published the meeting at 6?
We have to meet before, and then limit it so that we stay on the published timeline for the workshop and set in the village.
Well, that's objective my page. Would you consider this the budget meeting because we're setting our budget?
Sure, yeah, it could be discussed during the budget workshop. I don't see any problem with that.
Okay,
What does everybody else think?
I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Concur.
Agreed.
Hey, just a mid-meeting comms check. Dave, how are you hearing us? Are you hearing us okay?
I can't hear you.
Perfect, I got you, thanks.
No, I hear you. What's happening is that if anyone speaks too fast, suddenly the system garbles it. So you have to speak very clear and concise and close to the microphone.
Okay, if no one objects, we're going to take a 10-minute break.
Yes.
All right, break time.
Okay.
I'd like to call to order the June 21st work session back after our break. It is now 7:17. So item number 2 is discuss moving the sandbag station to the marina, and this is requested by Councilmember Zabel. Mike, would you like to start with that?
Sure, just want to point, say what you have in front of you is, basic proposal, background, solution, reasoning, but really we have our sandbag station located at the entrance to one of our largest revenues, and that's, renting out the park for weddings, and other, romantic things. And if you see the picture, this is what you're really greeted when you drive up. You have that kind of ramshackle, looking sandbag station instead of seeing, the gorgeous area, perhaps a pavilion in the future. And that's just one item about how this affects the community, but the next one is really, it's that during a storm, it is at the end of a one-way. And that's why I posted that one picture showing the street, because if you have a line of cars going down that waiting for sandbags, it does make it difficult for people that are maybe putting a trailer in front of their house, for evacuation, etc. Well, we have the room right now at the marina. You could put upwards of 60 cars in there without affecting Gulf. I understand Gulf's also a evacuation route, but so is 9th Street. Regardless, that's not clogged up. The Gulf route is not clogged at all. We're clogging, citizens. So I want to remove the burden from those citizens, place the sandbag station, and frankly, what is a commercial activity, which is the marina area where we have space for it. So, do you like, I mean, I have my background solution reasoning, if you want to look at that. That's it.
Kyle, would you like to add anything to that?
No,
That was-
just, like in the past, we've built that, sand bin, we call it, at Bayside Park. That was done in 2018. Sand can really be put anywhere, if it was at the marina, I'd just have to coordinate how the traffic flowed. One of the issues at 9th Street is, when you have the cars coming to the sandbag station is getting them turned around and out of there. Another thing that was brought up in the past was creating some kind of path, or drive through by the Frontier building into the main parking lot to enable a way to circle the traffic. But that's all I have on that.
Is there any way to have an outflow through the parking lot? Did you look at that and see if that was feasible to provide access out so we have one-way traffic?
There is enough room. It's not gonna be, necessarily a two-way street. You could create definitely an access through there that you wouldn't have to keep open at all times. But it's definitely, it's doable, it's possible, there's enough room in there.
Yeah, I think, Mike, it makes sense, everything that was brought forward here. I'm thinking at a higher level in that, well, for example, the county says on their site, sandbags are only recommended for residents who may experience minor flooding from rainfall. Sandbags will not protect against storm surge from the bay or tidal waters. Now clearly, that's where we live. Pinellas County has plenty of places where they may have localized problems because their stormwater system can't handle the rain amount that's there because of a storm. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if we even have a minor, storm, and the high tides come in and they connect over, the sandbags aren't gonna do anything. And I feel badly when I see everybody working their tail off, to be honest with you, filling up these sandbags and carrying them back and forth. And we're limited by the number of sandbags we can get for obvious reasons. What do we get, 20? What's our rule, Kyle? How many? 20. And then I see people putting the sandbags in front of the garage doors. You should never do that. The only place you should put those sandbags where the water would come in through the garage door is like in front of your, in my case, like the kitchen door that comes through the garage on the other side. Water's gonna get, that's the door you need to protect, not the garage door. Especially if you're only getting 20 sandbags. You start putting them in how many houses when I drive around the city did I see where people have sandbags in front of the garage door? Not only that, but many of them keep them there for a long time for some particular reason. But I think that's something we need to think about. Really, the core question is, where we live, do we want to offer sandbagging? Is it really worth it at the end of the day? I don't know, people have been here, I'm sure Leslie, you've been here a very long time. Have we ever had a storm where that it hit in this area where the sandbags actually played a role in preventing water from getting into people's homes?
Hermine,
Pardon?
Hermine, 2015, I think it was. That was only a tropical, that was actually only a hurricane when it just passed us.
Yeah, Hermione.
And what happened?
We had water up to the garages and everything like that. Some of the places in Bay Shore that were actually flooded out. And we didn't really start the sandbagging, in my opinion, in the appropriate amount of time.
I think the problem that we run into and why so many people need sandbags is not so much if it's high tide, full moon, we have a major storm, and the water gets close to the front door, and that happens quite frequently. And then you have someone drive down the road, and they cause a wake that pushes that water right to the front door. And it happens on Harrison, right at the bridge. And that's why I'm sensitive to it, because I watched that house on the corner.
And we discussed that earlier. In
Yeah.
fact, I think Councilman Roberts' point was, it's not a case of, you know, if, it's a case of when. You know, as when we were talking about trying to educate the community that these flood prevention measures we're taking, they'll help alleviate, but they're not going to prevent the flooding.
Right.
It will come. You know, if
I'd
they
like
hit all
to
the
make a
things.
comment.
But
Go ahead.
Okay, first off, I agree with Mr. Roberts that sandbag is not going to prevent flooding, but I will say what it does do. If you have torrential downpour and you have high winds, it will prevent that rain from penetrating under your door because you're blocking the wind from pushing the rain in. Also, sandbags are just part of hurricane prep. Whether we argue over whether they work or don't work or anything like that, people expect sandbags. So I will stand behind 100% that we never get rid of distributing sandbags. And then the last comment that I would like to make on this is I have no problem moving the sandbags up to the marina. However, I live on the north side. For the people living on the south side, they are going to have to drive an extra mile to get those sandbags. They may not be happy about that. The city hall is the centrally located point of Bel Air Beach, and it's convenient for both the north and the south that way, even though it's not the best configuration for turning around and hurting the cars in and out. But I'm just playing the devil's advocate because I know what people are going to say whenever it's moved north, is that you did that for people up north, and what about us? So all good points to consider.
Okay, Leslie?
Okay. Living on Gulf Boulevard, there are times when trying to get out onto Gulf Boulevard from a side street is a nightmare. And, you know, if there's a storm coming through and you pulled into the marina, getting back out onto Gulf Boulevard to come south from there, you know, is not going to be fun. It's going to be a nightmare.
With 9th Street.
Fortunately, hopefully the people that have come from Clearwater Beach have come and turned down gone over the causeway. At least 9th Street, there aren't as many people. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't know if you peeked at my notes. but
Pardon?
I said, I don't know if you peeked at my notes, but most of the people coming to the events that park in the main parking lot, they don't park out back here. I frequently visit this parking area because I live on 8th Street, so we're here a couple times a week. I've never seen that parking lot filled up, even with events. The city utility shed is adjacent to the current sandbagging station. Hence, all tip material will then be needed to transport across town. Each day we have the sandbagging station open, and we move it down to the marina. Time is of the essence when a storm is approaching. Our staff further have homes that need to be attended and prepped. Minimizing their time should be the most and utmost important consideration. Everyone lives south of the marina. We will be putting the sandbagging station in an evacuation zone used by Sand Key Clearwater and a public crosswalk right at it. Everyone going for sandbags will now need to cross Gulf Boulevard to return home. We further could have a traffic jam on Gulf Boulevard getting in and out of the marina. Having the bagging station at City Hall allows all cars to get onto 9th Street easily, and if crowded, the ability to safely park, stay with their vehicle, and not cause congestion on the county evacuation road. Most of all, further makes this an easy right-hand turn for most people living in Bel Air Beach. They don't have to cross Gulf Boulevard. Cars now are generally weight overloaded by way of vehicle weight capacity when leaving the sandbagging station. Most sandbags weigh between 40 to 55 pounds. We provide 20 bags to each resident, which generally has a total weight near or exceeding 1,000 pounds. Compact cars, SUVs, have weight ratings from 825 to 1,100 pounds. Sandbags alone can exceed this weight when putting the bags in the residents' vehicles. Now, instead of driving a few blocks on an overweighted vehicle, they may have to travel nearly 2 miles on an overloaded vehicle. If a car breaks down returning from the sandbagging station on Gulf Boulevard, then a real problem occurs in an evacuation time-sensitive period. Boat renters of the marine, during a forecast of a hurricane, will surely be prepping their vessels. This will bring additional vehicles into the marine parking lot, which should cause not only confusion, but hot tempers and possibly more. The current sandbagging station is easily guarded by the sheriff's department and easily watched over by our city employees. It is further chain closed at night coming into it. It was just a few years ago the sandbagging station was subject to landscapers taking sand. Putting it in a secluded area could once again have anyone take sand from it. For over the past year, construction crews have staged material, trucks, equipment, etc. for undergrounding in the marine parking lot. This alone has shortened the topography of the area. Even before undergrounding, the county has placed construction equipment temporarily in the marine parking lot. Simply a storm occurs, getting the equipment moved out, will not be workable function, and again, shortening the area of sandbag. For 9 years I've been here, no incidents have occurred or caused trouble where the sandbagging station is current. True, when Ian came, it looked like a Cat 5 storm was coming. People were nervous. People came to the sandbagging stations in droves. But mostly everyone was courteous, stayed on 9th Street. Maybe we ought to hire Jules Chandler. The one day she did a marvelous, she really did a marvelous job turning all the cars around, bringing the cars. I give my hand to her. She did a great job. But once again, I always have a problem with something that works in government, interfering with it and trying to make it better, usually makes it worse.
Thank you. You probably put more work into that reclama than I did in this initial thing, but really, if you could take that opinion that government can only make things worse, then this is not the right place for it. We're trying. I got no skin in the game. I'm not on 9th Street, but I'm just trying to look out for the residents of 9th Street when we went forward to that. So, it's up to you guys how you vote.
No, I feel bad for people on 9th Street this past storm, but again, it looked like we were getting wiped out. Even the Weather Channel was a little upset when it turned,
Well, Frank was here, wasn't he?
I think maybe
Weather Channel was on the beach.
a good solution might be to look at that temporary drive aisle that would at least allow people out through between the buildings, I guess it is where we would be. Is it the north side or the south side of the?
The south side of the foot, so between the tennis court and the Frontier building.
Because that won't really hurt anything if we did like a gravel temporary drive aisle. It's really not, we'll have to make sure it's closed off. It might mean putting a park bench in front of it on each side so no one, uses it when they're not supposed to, but allowing us access out, because I can see that if you've got a couple of cars stacked up here, that it could be cumbersome getting turned around. Maybe as a solution would be to try to find a way to evacuate those cars out of the sandbag area without going back out tonight.
I worked that station during Ian for 2 days, and we had cars there, but I'll tell you one thing, everyone was as courteous and humane. Again, I don't know what Jules did in their younger days or whatever, and I'm not saying anything about the age range, but she did a marvelous job. Marvelous job getting all that traffic in and out, and everyone was, like I said, they helped out, it was courteous. There was congestion on 9th Street to a point, but it worked out.
So what do we want to do with this? Anyone?
So it sounds like Kyle's gonna take a look at some possible traffic flow improvements, options.
That potential is going from this parking lot to that parking lot, which is it's like a gravel temporary driveway to be blocked by park benches idea. So you come in and then you can exit out here.
Right.
It's So that'd be the state, because once you're out, you just get the hell out of Dodge. Come down 9th, fill up this direction, take the temporary gravel road to this parking lot, and then exit out on the street.
On Causeway, yeah.
And maybe Kyle as well, because I know some of this was addressing aesthetics, which I get where you're coming from. So Kyle, maybe if there's some temporary, non-permanent structures that can be put in that area to improve the aesthetics of the sandbag filling area there, that may help, take care of that, so people don't actually see it until we want it to be activated.
Well, it simulates a dumpster enclosure, very similar to what's behind the building, so I don't know how you can do anything better. I mean, it is a very nice, I can tell from the photograph, I mean, I'm not standing next to it, but it's durable, the gates are on wheels, they're easily closed, they look like they're in good shape. I don't know what else we could do. It looks to me like a dumpster enclosure, which you can't get away from having those in parking lots and what have you.
Good point.
Could you move it over to, you just started talking about that temporary drive. Would you moved over to that section?
Still keeping the temporary drive, but just put the, that whole area adjunct to it, so it would keep it centered in the city. You wouldn't have it really in the eyesight of anybody running the area for weddings. Because you said, you hit the spot, it's a dumpster enclosure.
Yeah, we have a dumpster enclosure up there.
Yeah, but I don't want to take my pictures with my wedding with a dumpster enclosure on this side.
The background pictures.
Yeah.
Leslie, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, in Mike's thing here, you said he got a complaint from somebody on Harbor Drive about the time when 9th Street gets flooded and stuff. Maybe we move the 9th Street flood improvement issues up to the top of the list to go with.
We are, aren't we? Are we
Yeah,
attacking
everything's
that?
Yeah.
We're attacking that street first,
Okay.
which should be attacked.
And it doesn't prevent it, it helps alleviate it.
And I will differ with anyone's opinion on sandbag. If you're working in the construction field, you can keep about 3 to 4 feet of water off your sandbags properly well, you have to have retaining line too.
Have there what?
Lining behind the sandbags.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we need to help the homeowners understand it. They need to put some plastic behind that.
With 20 bags, it's not going to cure anything. I mean, like you said, I don't want water coming out of my garage because I don't have it through my kitchen, but 20 bags is good for a front door, a small back door. Most people have probably 4 openings to their house here.
Yeah, if you want to get
Sliding doors, your 20 bags right there.
Kyle, can I ask that you and Mike take a look at this on a side project and come back to us to see if we can come up with a solution? Because this is not, we're not going to come up with any ideas here. It sounds like no one's really in support of moving it, so maybe we can just come up with a solution to make this more usable.
Yeah, come up with a way to filter the traffic, possibly opening up that connection point between the parking lot and Harbor.
It sounds like the Marine Project, right?
Okay.
Within these constraints, and you do.
Right. Okay.
Kyle, you can just shoot me an email to remind me, and I'll work with you. We'll have a good proposal like that we're doing for the other stuff.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay. All right, moving on. Item number 3, discuss the term limits for city council members. And this was Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you very much. I realized that it wasn't that long ago when the city decided to implement the term limits. I have always been, interestingly enough, for term limits until relatively recently, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. To me, it makes way more sense if, bottom line, if somebody is in a position for the city, council member, mayor, regardless, and that person is not doing the job they should be doing, then it's up to the citizens of the city to take care of that from a voting standpoint. Some of the downsides of having the term limits are as follows. Obviously, if you have somebody who's doing a great job in any of the city positions and are there for 2 terms and they have to leave, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Secondly, our mayor has told us that he's been potentially considered for opportunities in some of his positions available in the county. And for the most part, he's not really considered because they know he's in a 2-term limit scenario. He's already served, 1, so they know he's only going to be here for a short period of time. So he doesn't really get considered for those positions. So all that being said, I am completely in favor of just basically eliminating the last sentence on section 2.02 that says commencing with the office of those council members whose terms begin in 21, individual council members, including the mayor, shall be prohibited from holding office for more than 2 consecutive terms. So to Randy, if we wanted to re-vote and supported changing that, what's the process we have to go through?
Thank you, Member Roberts. That is an excellent question. The process for amending your charter would require a vote of your electorate. So what we would do is adopt an ordinance that says we wish for this matter to be placed on the ballot. I think I've typically done this with a secondary ordinance that includes the ballot language. There are specific statutes on referendum items. I believe the title is limited to 10 words. The summary is limited to 75. I would write that. And so what it would be you folks saying, yes, draft an ordinance to that effect to place this on a ballot measure coming from the commission on, for the consideration of the public at the next regularly scheduled election. I see we are presently in June, so we would certainly have time if you wished for something like this to get on the ballot for November, though we would want to make sure we know, if you have a November election year, we want to make sure we know what those deadlines are with the supervisor of elections office, because they, for example, in a March election, you typically need to have ballot language submitted to them, approved by your commission, et cetera, by mid-December. So we would want to check what those deadlines are. And I'm not sure that we are having a regularly scheduled election that the city residents would vote on. I know you folks are not up for election in November, but if there's some other midterm, I'm just not remembering as I sit here right now.
I don't think we have anything on the ballot.
Patty, do we have anything scheduled for November? If you know.
I don't believe you do.
How about
So-
March?
How about March? Yeah, 3.
Next
Yeah,
March,
you
yeah.
have seats up, so we could certainly do it in time. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely in time for March 2024. Obviously, this isn't a pressing issue that needs to be voted on tomorrow. If you did do it by special election, it's my understanding, though I've not specifically researched this, that it would be at expense to the city. Sometimes cities need or want to make these kinds of things happen off cycle, in which case that's at expense to you, and whatever resources that you would need in that regard.
What does everybody think?
Can I just add, there are several areas of, with regards to, not necessarily term limits, but the city council in general. I think we have talked about possibly reducing the size of council members to 5 rather than 7, doing some things like that. And all of that requires a charter review, and maybe we need to, put that on an agenda to start doing a charter review on some of those items. Because there will be a number of items that will need to be voted on by the citizens.
Electorate.
Yeah. So I am in full support of doing that sooner rather than later. Have the charter review done before the end of the year. So then they can do all the legwork to get it on the ballot for March.
So you feel like there's going to be several of other changes?
Yes.
There are.
The next item that's on the agenda would also have to go through the process.
If I can, I speak, I was on this committee. I'm definitely against removing the term limits. In fact, there was a strong feeling coming out of there. Because, in fact, we had the former mayor that wanted to get rid of the term limits, didn't like that. no reason for term limits is if you have a transient population coming in, coming out, then the use of the ballot box is a very good way to control what's going on in the community. But we have a very small community, and most of our votes are parochial. I can tell you, look around the table before you can tell which group, people belong to. And keeping the same member in there tends to disenfranchise those that, are not in that group. That being said, these are charter issues. Patty, how much does it cost to raise one issue during the general election? There is a cost associated, because when I was on the review, we were only really allowed to put forward 2. So we had to prioritize all the charter amendments that the committee wanted to put out.
So what was your question? How many?
much?
How much?
Dollar-wise for one of these.
For one? I mean, I don't have it in front of me. I don't have it off the top of my head. Are you talking November or are you talking
I know
March?
it wasn't inexpensive during
Yeah.
the regular cycle that to put forward because you have to go through the printing and the additional cost for the ballot placement.
And that went on like in March of 2021.
This was actually 8/3/2020, but yeah, it was that.
On top of that ballot.
Yeah.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, right here.
There you go. Yep.
The question was if it was during a regular session, a regular
Yeah.
general election,
All
so let's say
part.
March 2024.
March?
What would be the added cost to add a single ballot measure, roughly?
Just one?
If you just had one?
Yeah, it's not going to be that much. I can't give you a dollar amount, but it's not going to be a lot, because
Okay.
that's already our election, and they're just going to add that on there, one ballot question, one referendum question.
I will tell you, and without speaking to the cost, just procedurally, there are some communities at a time where they've had as many as, 5 to 10 on a ballot because they were doing a charter review and decided they need to overhaul things. Excuse me, so I'm not speaking to the administrative costs associated with that, but legally, you can do more than 1 or 2. Again, that's a question that might come up.
Yeah,
I think
go
the
ahead.
last time we just prioritized what had to hit the ballot each
We did.
cycle. And I believe Dave was trying to add something. Dave, did you have something to add to this?
Yes, I did. I think for me, my view on this is that there's multiple changes that I think would make the council and the way that the local government runs more efficient, and also it would be more cost effective. We kind of touched on it briefly about not removing, but eliminating 2 positions and dropping us down to 5 council members. That was one idea. And if you look at, you compare all the other communities up and down the beach, we have the most. So that's one part of it. The other part is I still am in agreement with term limits, but absolutely one more is needed, at least. And the reason why I think Mr. Roberts already touched on that, about how whenever you first become mayor, you start making a slight impact, but then you build the relationships with the county, the state, your neighboring communities, and your second term as mayor is whenever you really are able to start gaining traction and making things happen. So I would say that whenever we push this through, and it's actually my fault, limiting us to 2 terms was a terrible mistake. And I think that it's going to be hard to sell the seat on it, but I think that if we all agreed with it, that it would just be up to us to sell the concept to the city so that it didn't fail in an election. And then the last piece of it is the streamlining of our whole election process. Rather than doing the expensive, let's do it in March, I think that we would have far greater voter turnout if we realigned our elections with the general and midterm elections. So what does that look like, and how do you restructure everything that we know right now? How much of it can be consolidated onto a single ballot item? In other words, if you look at the entire concept rather than each piece of it, you may not want just one piece of it to pass and the other to fail. I think that whatever it is that we come up with and we agree upon, we try to jam it in one single ballot item, that this is our vision for the future. And then, of course, Mr. Mora would have the daunting task of figuring out how the implementation of that would occur. Because you're going to have people that are not up for election, or their term is not about to end, or it would fall on a weird date to convert it over. So those are some things to consider. That's just my opinion on where I see the city going forward. And a lot of it is in response to what we're all facing right now, which is we're about to, at the beginning of the year, we're going to have to start doing these full disclosure reports. And I think I've heard at least one or two sitting council members say they don't want to do that. I think that as your neighbors realize what they're having to disclose to even be a part of the council, they're not going to want to do it anymore. So we may very well have limited choices going forward.
Yes, Frank?
I go back to General or President Washington when his parting words at the end of the second term noted the transfer of power from one citizen statesman to another is a core principle of our constitutional republic. Washington first knew his supporters that wanted him to stay, and most of America wanted to stay, but he also said that the longer he or anyone retained power over the democracy, the less democratic it became. I think 2 terms in the city or anywhere is more than enough. 92% of the voters, almost 93% of the voters in March of 2021 said so. I agree with what Mike said. I'll use the word little cliques in the towns that come out. When you look at how many people actually vote, 26 to 22%, you can change administrations overnight. And I know people say, well, sometimes it's hard to get people, but people have to step up if they want a government that works. I mean, one of the reasons I ran for government, I can't stand most governments the way they work, but I came here to hopefully preserve what I inherited when I moved here. I didn't want a thing changed, and that's why I ran for office. So I'm going to be against I wouldn't be against anything that just 3 years ago the voters voted 92%. But if you dump enough money into something, I'm sure you can get 92% to go the other way.
Well, I think we all agree that a charter review is necessary. So let's move forward in trying to put the charter review committee together. And then all of those details will get hashed out.
I agree, so it's basically you put the ad out for volunteers, for Cobble.
I'll look to our city attorney and
Well, I'd want to look towards your code because I'm not sure if you're, well, one, I will make sure there's no other legal requirements for that. I don't believe there are, but if you're doing a charter review committee, your CAC may be a sufficient vessel for that, given it's your Citizens Advisory Committee, given its very broad charge under your charter. That may be a vehicle for conducting that. But yes, I would work with Kyle and we could come back to you with a recommendation at a later date on how best to proceed with that. I've not had the occasion to be here in your city to see how you've conducted those in the past either, so I want to make sure that we're advising consistent with current law.
perfect. Then we'll look forward to hearing that.
Is there consensus direction in that regard to come back with recommendations on the process for a charter review committee?
sounds like that's, everyone's in favor of that.
I agree.
Certainly consensus, so thank you. Understood.
Okay, moving forward to item 4, discussion of salaries for city council members.
Thank you very much. And Dave already mentioned the only reason that I even brought this forward. So I'm reading here in our current chart, 2.03, said the council by ordinance can actually do this. But the main reason I'm thinking that we should consider something like this, when Dave mentioned the Form 6, we're going to have even less people that are going to be interested in running for these positions. And my hope would be that potentially some type of a small salary may incent some qualified, good citizens in our city to run, if that made a difference. That's my thought.
If I may, Vice Mayor, I know for each of you, you've seen my memorandum that discusses this. I think just for the benefit of the public that may view this, it warrants briefly addressing what you're talking about. During the legislative session this year, the legislature nearly unanimously adopted a new statute that changed the financial disclosure requirements for elected officials in local municipalities. You have historically filled out what is called a Form 1, and the Form 1 has general disclosure requirements of where are your assets and liabilities held, and that's about it. Form 6 is different substantially. It is what is commonly referred to as a full and public financial disclosure. These are public records. Field A on a Form 6 begins with you stating a calculus of your net worth. And that net worth has its own directions on how you are to calculate it. Field B, I believe, immediately begins with you identifying all of your assets held that are in excess of $1,000 each. And so if you, for example, have a firearm collection and your guns are of value exceeding $1,000, you would have to give the aggregate value of your gun collection, and then each of those that is valued individually over $1,000. So you have to identify all of your assets over $1,000, not those that are solely held by your spouse or partner, but you would have to disclose those that are jointly held. Then additionally, you have to disclose all of your liabilities in excess of $1,000. So your car note, for example, things like that would all be requisite disclosures. In addition to these requirements, the penalty for non-compliance is increased from what I believe was $10,000 to $20,000. So a substantial increase in the penalty, enough that you would not want to toy around with seeing if you did it right. This is not limited by whether or not you are compensated. That was one of the proposed amendments, that this only be required in cities where elected officials are compensated by their city. That did not take. There was another attempt at an amendment that this only be required in communities that were of a certain size or population, let's say Orlando or Miami, not quite Sopchoppy or Bel Air Beach. But that didn't take either. This applies equally to all elected officials in local municipalities. It takes effect with the new year. It is effective immediately as a law, but the terms of the law make it such that if you are in office on January 1, 2024, you will be filling out a Form 6. You should be filling out Form 1s that are due in the next 9 days. So by July 1, your Form 1 for 2022 is due. But if you are in office come January 1, 2024, you will be filling out a Form 6 for the first time. So that's what to the extent the public hears any of the changes that are required, this is, the justifications for this are, of course, increased transparency, enhanced ability to evaluate potential conflicts. This is separate and apart from election and campaign finance disclosures. That's a different thing. We're talking about your assets, not those things, not, hey, I got $500 for my campaign. That's a different thing, subject to different rules, not administered by Chapter 112, but administered by a separate section. The last thing I would note is when you fill these out, these are public record. You are admonished not to put your social security number, your bank routing number, all that stuff in there. But when you do fill them out, they are in fact public records. So that is For some, that's become a cause of concern. I know I've talked with some elected officials who said that that's not what I signed up for, and that's a personal choice each person's going to have to make. I gave a statewide presentation on this yesterday for the Florida League of Cities through their webinar, which you're free to watch. It's largely an exposition of the memorandum that you've already been provided. So I didn't mean to sideline the conversation too much, but I think it's important to know what we're talking about when we're using these inside baseball terms for the public.
Randy, did I read somewhere that in lieu of actually filling out the Form 6, an individual could turn in a copy of their income tax return?
That is true but imprecise. I would say that if you look at the actual substance of the Form 6, that allows you to satisfy the elements of Field E. It is one field of the analysis, so you can use your tax forms to substantiate one field. However, comma, in doing so, please know that you are making your tax returns public records.
Right.
How much are you looking for a salary?
I haven't done any detail on that. I just wanted to see what the thoughts were with the council. I know I have talked briefly with some of the other towns when I've been out of town at League of City meetings and things like that. So I have found out during those lunch conversations that I haven't found any other town or city that is not compensated. Many of them are surprisingly compensated with a number that shocked me. But that's not really what, again, my whole statement was, if this might help additional citizens in Bel Air Beach be incented to want to be a participant in what goes on in our city, then I'm for it. It's not for me.
No, what I'm saying is, who amongst us needs a salary to do this job?
Not me.
Not me, okay? I don't think anybody. And if we have to entice somebody to pay them, if we have the money in the budget to pay somebody, to pay council members, our field staff is so overworked, in my opinion. And we're looking at buying a boat or whatever like that. They cannot keep up with the duties they have now, okay? Unless we put them on 12 hours a day, which I'm sure they don't want to work. I'm not suggesting that, but put another field staff or something like that, because I don't see how they can keep up now with the work assignments they have. With this rain now, they're going to be triply taxed because of a few days they couldn't get out and do some of the mowing and everything else like that. I think the money should be going to the employees of the city if we have extra money to perform the services that the people ask for, and we should be provided.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, the thought behind it, but, it comes down to $1 put into a councilman's pocket is $1 that's not on the streets helping prevent floods, but I mean, I like the,
And if we
the
go
thought
from
behind
7
it.
to 5, that may help. It may not be as big a deal.
Yeah, I'm definitely not for it, but.
Right.
Leslie, do you have any input?
I would agree with Frank's statement.
Belinda or Mayor, any input?
Sure. I also believe that we don't actually need a salary. We live in Bel Air Beach. However, I call for a token salary. We're paid per meeting so that we don't walk around saying we do this for €0. I don't think anyone in the room actually needs the money. However, about expenses incurred for the Form 6 alone, if you have an account and you have turned that form into that account, you're paying. So now, working for the city is actually costing you money. And I see absolutely nothing wrong with extra token salary. As a token appreciation for everything all of you do.
This is Belinda. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, she's
Okay. I completely understand where Councilmember Roberts is coming from, having attended several of the Florida League of Cities conferences myself, the discussion of salaries. So I understand that. I understand also that we have one of the smallest cities as well, so we're not taxed as heavily as perhaps other commissioners or council members. But, you know, Mayor Gaddis put up a good point about moving forward, it's going to cost us more than our time. And so, you know, something small, and I know when you hear the word salary, you think a large number. It doesn't have to be anything big, but just something to compensate individuals for their time, because I do have a feeling, I did watch Attorney Mora's class on Tuesday, and it was very informative and very detailed in some of the information that we have to provide. And I think that folks are not going to want to step forward, and perhaps this might provide them with some sort of compensation for that.
Thank you. I would agree that it's there, because one of the things that came to my mind is, in consideration of this Form 6, I'm going to have to hire my attorney and my accountant to determine how I proceed. And there's an expense to that. I think it's necessary. I don't think it's going to help people step up to the plate, but I think it's necessary to offset some of the expenses you incur when you assume a position like this. There's a risk involved, and it's I think it's necessary. And I don't care how small any town is. Every League of City meeting I've gone to, we are the only city not compensated. If you're a council member and you don't want that compensation for your expenses or whatever it is that you might use it for, then you can always donate it back to the city. I mean, you don't have to take it. But I think that it's important to offer it. We're the only city that doesn't.
I think the town of Bel Air might be the only other jurisdiction in Pinellas County where they're not compensated.
The town of Bel Air?
Yes.
Okay.
To my knowledge, it's the only other one in Pinellas County where that's the case. I will tell you that communities are having the discussion on some sort of stipend or subsidization, not a salary, but some are talking about subsidizing that cost. Here is a cost to defray the cost of service, since this is I've heard somebody characterize as an unfunded mandate, right? As you said, to do this right, I may wish to engage a professional. That's at cost to me now, because I've otherwise agreed to serve, and so perhaps this would be an appropriate use of public funds in connection with your role. That's ultimately for you folks to decide. I would note that however you proceed, the way that your charter is written, if you pass an ordinance today, it doesn't take effect until 2 election cycles later. So that's something to take note of, that it would not take effect in April or something of that sort. So just something to consider.
Which I think that's fair enough. I don't think any of us are looking for compensation. We knew what the deal was when we took it, but moving forward, for those who will consider running, it's important to have that laid out for them. So again, it's by ordinance. Would this be something we would just bring in front of council then? It doesn't need to be voted on by citizens in a general election?
The way your charter reads, it says the council by ordinance shall determine the annual salary, if any. So it contemplates that could be 0 and it could be something, and whatever it is to be shall be determined by the council. I would have to review that and make sure there are no other provisions in your code, as this was a work session, in preparing any such ordinance. But yes, it would be submitted, of course, subject to public comment and input. But yes, the council would have the ability ultimately to set it by ordinance on first and second reading.
I think it would be something that had to be done by the electorate. I know what it says, but I think if it was challenging, I think the electorate has to approve it.
And what are you basing that on? Just so I understand and I make sure.
I don't have a case law in front of me, but you're changing the whole structure or the dynamics of the history of this town. Off of now just the council going in and saying, okay, we're going to start paying each other.
Well, I'd be happy to review it. I would just say that the people of the city have spoken in the plain language of the charter, and what I would interpret would be the plain language of the charter. Understanding it would be a cultural shift, to be certain. I'm not aware of any language to the contrary of this language. If there is, I would review it, and I would certainly, I am not suggesting at all that the city circumvent what is otherwise required. I'm not aware that the Ethics Code, Chapter 112, specifically allows for a council to vote on its own salary increases, such as provided that they take effect after the tenure of that sitting council. So I'm not aware of any legal restriction otherwise, but I'll be happy to review that and bring forward anything for you.
So I think to move this forward, would it make sense that you come back with an opinion for us? And
Yeah, just whatever consensus direction you provide. If the consensus direction is please provide us with the insight on what the process is, we can do that. If the consensus direction is please prepare an ordinance, we can do that. I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you're asking of me so I can achieve goals and we have clear expectations of one another.
I'm going to suggest,
Please.
yes?
Just in response to Mr. Banker's comments about, I believe this is spoken there, that was written.
Mr.
Mr.
Gaddis, can you just maybe, I think it's your microphone, can you just speak loud into your microphone because you're breaking up?
Can you hear me all?
What?
We can hear sounds.
Yeah, we can hear,
It's,
it's breaking.
We call it, yeah, we call it breaking
yeah.
up.
Like garlic.
Like a submarine.
We don't hear anything.
If I may, just a suggestion at this point, this is mostly admin. Would it be better if we move this to the next working session because of the problem with the mics right now, because I could not understand what the mayor was bringing up. I had parts and bits and parts of what was, obviously important.
I agree.
And I'd really like to hear his, his full thoughts.
I agree.
Is he back?
Can you hear me at all now?
Yes,
Yes.
better. Go ahead.
Can you hear us?
We're holding the sign, yes.
Mr. Mayor?
How about this, moving forward, why don't we move it to the next work session, but maybe when we come back to that work session, you put some numbers to pencil to paper and let us, what are you thinking about compensation by meeting, compensation just as across the board, compensation for, and I don't, because I have no idea what to base it on. I have no idea, don't even know where, other than calling around other cities and seeing how they
Right, that's
compensate.
the first step. I was gonna ask Randy, so is that something that falls within our guidelines, Randy, or is that an additional expense? As an example, if we recommended to go ahead and put the ordinance together with just a blank for the amount of money?
I'm not sure I understand the first half of your question. If you're asking, is that within the retainer?
Yeah.
Yes, preparation of an ordinance like that is ordinarily within the retainer.
Okay.
When you talk about something like a charter review committee, that's a special project that's
Sure.
outside of it, just based by scope and operation. But the preparation of an ordinance is what you pay me to do on a regular basis. The only time the preparation of an ordinance can become a special project under our contract where it requires special attention, I would give you the example of what I did in Indian Rock Beach with the short-term rental, where we're having 5 workshops and four hearings all on one ordinance, and a meeting with all these shareholders. That's a different project. But something like this, of course, that would be within it.
Thank you. So that's why I would recommend if Randy could come back with the ordinance, with the amount of blank. And then that's something we could discuss. We would know what that's saying, know what it looks like. And then we could have it the next workshop. Okay, this is what it is. And then we could agree on either 0 or some number. Put it blank.
Are you gonna do the research? Who's gonna research?
I'll do it, I'll make phone calls.
I believe our firm recently did this for another jurisdiction, and I will ask for that
Thank you.
Perfect.
compensation study and circulate it if we have it.
Okay,
And if we
perfect.
don't, I'll make sure that's clear to Kyle.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
Okay, and that'll just hit the next work session.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so moving forward to item number 5, discussion of a full-time administrative assistant position. Councilmember Roberts.
Me again. Yeah, actually, I had a pretty detailed discussion with our city manager. They have tried with staff to try to find somebody as part-time. That has been unsuccessful for various reasons. I feel like we need additional support in that area, and that's been confirmed by people in our staff that I've talked to. So I think the right direction to go is a full-time person. I have had people talk to me personally about, the fact that we call the city and the current staff is unable to actually get the call because you guys are so busy. That additional staff person, I feel, would definitely help in that area, as well as other tasks that you guys take on. So that's why I feel like we need to, and I'm pretty sure it's already budgeted for full-time. Yeah, so we've already got it budgeted, so all we need to do is, tell Kyle, please move forward and advertise for a full-time as opposed to a part-time, and let's get that built.
I would be very much in favor of that, and we always used to have a full-time receptionist and stuff. Now everybody sort of picks up the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I just don't want to step on his toes. I mean, we oversee the management. It's Kyle's call. Kyle, I haven't heard from you directly on this.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think what Member Roberts is saying is that, we have it planned in the 2024 budget, for full-time, and it, council seems to be in agreement thus far with that. But at this point, in our current budget, we haven't had that position, which was a part-time position, filled for enough time that the remaining time left, we could advertise immediately for a full-time position and be able to compensate for inside of this year's budget.
Okay, just to be clear too, we looked at the code enforcement. There's a drop in those hours, so this person could help with at least the administrative workload, covering that loss there, that they could be additionally working on that as well.
Yes, I feel like bringing more of the administrative work and code enforcement, even some of the driving around and observing code violations, bringing that more in-house is a much cheaper endeavor than to, have the sheriff do as much. And I see the benefits in having the sheriff's office perform some code enforcement, but I think we should try to do as much in-house as possible as well.
Okay, no, good thought.
It occurred to me that if we get a full-time administrative assistant, then we could have somebody else do the code enforcement, which means we might be able to reduce the budget for the sheriff's office for their doing code enforcement
We
for
already
us.
did.
Pardon?
We already dropped those hours.
Okay.
That's what I was just saying.
Yeah.
We already dropped the hours in the budget,
Yeah,
so I just want to make sure that that's a good idea. She fills in that delta there.
yeah.
No, we
right.
already did it.
Okay.
Right. Here. Yeah, it sounds like, Dave, did you have anything you want to add?
Well, first off, am I any clearer?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, next, Kyle and I had a discussion about this, and I agree with his proposal. I think it's a great idea. I would like to go back on the other topic, but I will wait till the end of the meeting just to revisit that right quick.
Which one was it?
I think salary, that's where he's in and out.
Linda, did you have anything to add? Linda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So yes, I'm in agreement. I had the same conversation with Kyle last week, and I'm in favor of moving for a full-time administrative assistant.
Okay. Yeah, I would be in support as well. I'm the caller that hangs up and calls everyone's extension every time no one answers the phone. So
Yeah.
I can only imagine how residents must feel. And then I call Kyle's cell phone. So, I am in huge support of having someone, even if it's just answering phones, so, yeah. Kyle, please proceed. Okay, general business, anyone have anything else?
We all get this larger public library.
Yes.
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, we always were giving our residents, I guess, 50% of the library annual fee. I think it's
We
$100
reimburse them 50%, yeah.
And I got a kid with a resident, they said I don't ever remember giving them 100%. It was 100, okay. I couldn't remember, because Glenn, I had a discussion with Glenn Mellon last night, because it was libraries in the budget. I was saying, where's the library? And he explained the whole thing to me, but I actually said, if you're in there reading that much, you want to sign up to be a councilman. I'll give you more than enough to read every month, but I just want to be clear that we still were with the 50%.
That's correct,
Yeah.
yeah. Because what we found, I think, is that we had a lot of people getting the card, we were reimbursing for it, and they weren't using it. They had no skin in the game. So once we're required to put skin in the game, the participation dropped a little bit.
Now, this is hearsay, but I was also told that the Lauderdale Library said if we were a participant to their funding or whatever like that, it would be 100% funded. And I believe there was something last year that they wanted like $4,500.
That was a big number.
Yeah, it was a big number.
We
Close to
did discuss it.
$5,000, and everyone went, huh? You know, and I threw that out there, I just don't want to mislead anyone.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, Frank mentioned it earlier, and I had a discussion with Kyle as well as Avon, and so, yes, that's right, Aaron.
I do.
So about the staffing of the field staff, I have a lot of background in public works. The fact that we only have 2 field staff is wrong on a couple of measurements. First of all, if either one of them call in sick or have to go on vacation, there's many tasks in public works that can't be done by one person. It just can't be. So then either Aaron or Kyle or somebody has to fill in. We really don't want them doing it. They have things that they need to do. Consequently, I asked them, there's an acronym for it out there, but there's scheduled maintenance that often can't be done because you can't get to it. You don't have the staff. We need at least one more full-time employee in that arena.
Amen.
When I asked the question, well, if we do that, can you keep that third person busy? Aaron almost fell on the floor, I think, when I asked him that question. I mean, he's confident they can keep that third person more than busy. So I think we're doing a disservice to the city by not having that third field staff person out there. And I would say a large percentage of the conversations I have with citizens has to do with aesthetics in our city. And those are the things that we're probably not getting to because there's a lot of things they do that aren't seen, that have to be done. But when people say, well, gee, why does it just look better? Why does it not look better? Because they can't get to it. So I'm asking right now, what do we have to do? This is, I think, a good time to do it for the budget we're working on. If we could budget that additional field staff person for 2024, and if there's any way to do it sooner, I would fully support that as well.
I'd like to see a little more research behind it before we look at it, total for adding to the budget. But, I mean, if you'd like, go out and investigate, the person, qualifications, what would be needed for that position. Because I agree, I mean, you got 2 people, and some of them are 2-man lifts. You can't,
Right.
that object has to be moved and out of periodicity, whatever, but, yeah,
Even if
you just see the numbers on it.
Even if we promoted one of them to a foreman, working foreman, and bring the other one in, that he could direct and work.
I think that, this is Kyle's wheelhouse, and we need
Absolutely.
to just ask Kyle to present us with what
plan.
another person would look like as far as costs for budgeting and what type of duties and that sort of thing, kind of a job description, and bring it to us. That's at the budget meeting. Let's talk about it at the budget meeting, just bring us those details.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll get that together.
Let's see, I had one other thing. Laid out, was a tasking by the mayor to look at the rental policy as far as the wait list. So I just provided a draft. Obviously, changes aren't read, draft changes on. We're not working on it tonight, I just want to let you know that it's in the package. So if you got time, read it, provide thoughts for the next working session.
Mike, I think you did an excellent job, and there's only one thing I would. No,
Bleed all over it, as we say.
no. The only thing is that I thought there was always if your name's on the boats, if your name's on the list, you don't have to have a boat for, what was the proposal, like 6 months? You start paying from day one.
I got you, go ahead.
You know what I'm saying? And in your proposal, you have to have the boat before you put it on the list, or before you put your name on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Send Kyle an email for that, this is a reminder, and it's no sunshine. Send Kyle the email before we get down, but I'm trying to write it down
What I'm
right
saying
now.
is because we've had people in here saying it took me 7 years to get a boat slip. All right, and so I have to maintain a boat for 7 years, park it someplace, put it in another dock or whatever.
Has 90 days to provide a vote for the
Whatever,
second upon
you know what I'm saying?
approval.
Yeah,
But yeah, I agree with Mike. Let's review this, and anyone that has comments, send it
No, I
to
think you did an
Kyle.
excellent job.
Send it to Kyle, and then when we review it in the work session, maybe they can get included, and then we'll be
It's
able
a
to.
living doc, I mean, that's like, when I'm writing this, it's please bleed all over it, so.
Yeah, so that's more homework, right? So you go with the goals, and we're gonna review this,
Yeah.
and if there's comments.
But
send them to
I'll
Kyle.
make that, I'll put that in there, and then I'll submit.
Leslie, do you have anything?
No?
Ms. Lovingstone, do you have anything?
No, I'm good, thank you.
I think Dave, Mayor had something.
He's always last. He can wait. Dave, do you have anything?
Yes, just briefly, going back on the salary, there was a comment from the council that it needs to go back to the citizens and let them make that decision. Well, in a way, they already did, because they voted on the charter and gave us the freedom to be able to make these decisions. Also, due to the fact that it requires an ordinance, the citizens will have the opportunity to speak freely on their opinion twice as we vote on this, and also if we decided to discuss it again in a work session. So I am, one last comment on that is that no matter what we do, none of us will be there to reap the benefits of increasing or creating a salary for someone going forward. So I'm all for working on something towards a salary for future council members.
Good point. Anything else?
I think that's all I've got for now. I appreciate everyone tolerating me having to zoom in, and had I known it was sounding as bad as it was, I would have changed the hardware early on in the meeting. My apologies. If it ever happens again, just flat out say, I can't hear you, call in or something, and I'll make it right. Well, that's it. And Vice Mayor Shirley, I greatly appreciate you doing a superb job of chairing this meeting, and I hope I don't have to rely on you many more times, but I do greatly appreciate the work you did today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a
Motion.
Oh,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, have a good night, guys. Thank